The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. The ever-brilliant Kirk, Sir Jason the All-Knowing, Maddy, Chieftain of the Badlands, and one other. Welcome to Triple Click, where we bring the games to you. This week, we talk about Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, a big DLC that seems like it's just more Elden Ring. And it is, but it has its own mysteries we're still solving. I'm Maddy Myers.
I'm Jason Schreier.
And I'm Kirk Hamilton, and hello.
Welcome
Hi,
back
my friends.
to the lands between. Yay, I'm so excited for us to talk about Elden Ring again. But
It's pretty exciting.
I gotta just give a little quick shout out to the listeners before we get to that, because they're listening right now, and also some of them, a select few, very special Tarnished, have become Maximum Fun members. And what is that? You may very well ask. Well, all you have to do is go to MaximumFun.org/join, and the answers will be revealed to you at that URL. But really what it is that you can support Max Fun, which is our podcast network, and by supporting us, you get bonus episodes from all the shows on the network. Even if you're not supporting them, even if you only click the ticky box next to Triple Click, you get access to every bonus episode if you want. But you definitely get our bonus episodes, and we just recorded one about Psych Odyssey, which is a massive YouTube documentary about Double Fine creating Psychonauts 2, and it's fascinating, and everybody should watch it. And we talked about it with full spoilers on our feed, our bonus feed. So if you want that and every other bonus episode we've ever recorded, which we do one a month of, then go to MaximumFun.org/join, become a member, and there you have it.
There you have it.
Kirk, I already spoiled what we're talking about today, but take it away.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Shadow of the Erdtree at long last. There's
Yay.
more Elden Ring. And we've all been playing early review copies that we got, though, of course, it is now out. We're recording this a little bit early, and it's pretty good. I don't know. What do the two of you think?
Yeah, I think
Jason,
it's
you go
good.
first. How much have you played, and what do you think of it?
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's more Elden Ring, and you can't really complain about more Elden Ring. I think that it's interesting. I think when you first start and get into the first big area, you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is very familiar. It has kind of notes of Limgrave. The first big legacy dungeon is very similar to the first big legacy dungeon in vanilla Elden Ring. Mm-hmm. But then as you go on and you get much further into the game, you start to see some of the, unique, if not unique mechanics, although there are unique mechanics, at least unique ideas that bring a little bit of new spices to the stew. It's still the same stew, but maybe now there's a little bit of a note of cumin that wasn't there before. A little paprika you can taste.
What is this, triple cook?
Yeah.
That wasn't in there before. Yeah, I mean, I'm hungry. It's dinner time. And yeah, I really like it. I played a bunch. There's some really cool stuff in there. There's this one. So the second kind of big legacy dungeon is called Shadowkeep. And that one I think is really where things get really interesting, because that is probably bigger than any of the ones in the main game and has so many cool like secrets and intricacies and hidden passages and side quests or mini side quests. It's really, really cool. So I played a lot. I'm really into it. I don't know if I have the stamina to finish the whole thing. I have spent so many hours with Elden Ring at this point. I don't know if I can really do another, like, I don't know, however many hundreds more this is going to take. I've already run into some bosses that are real walls in progress. But I love it. I think it's awesome. I can see why it took 2 years plus for this to come out, as opposed to previous From Software DLCs, which are like a few months after the game.
Mm-hmm.
Maddie, how much have you played, and what do you think of it?
I have played a bunch of it. I guess we should maybe say around what levels we started the game started the DLC, because I think that affects things a little bit.
Sure.
I saw a couple people saying, like, as we're recording this, at least the review embargo is up, so people are talking about it. And I saw some people saying that, level 150 is like around where you need to be to feel like it's okay. And I didn't know that going in, but I started at 147. And I think that was a really good spot for me personally. That would be with my final main character in the first time I ever played Elden Ring, who I just left her at Round Table Hold and just figured I'd go back to her whenever the DLC came out. And that is more or less what I did, although I did start a new character to try to remember what the heck even happens in the game. I didn't catch that one up fast enough, so I ended up going back to my level 147 girl, and I'm really glad I did, because it meant that the beginning of the DLC wasn't too hard for me. And I got through the first couple bosses and was like, I'm challenged, but I'm having a great time. And now I'm like, oh, this game's really, really hard. And there's no way this is going to take me 30 to 40 hours, which is the guesstimate that I've seen some people say for this DLC. But unlike Jason, I'm really loving it, and I think I will get to the end. I'm not sure how long that's going to take me, but I'm having a great time. And I like the story, too. I like learning about Michaela. I barely understand the story, but I like the characters that I've met so far. And the idea of these followers of Michaela who are hiding in this weird shadow realm that's parallel to the realm that we know in the lands between, and Mesmer is this other sort of entity that's attacking them, and we are probably the bad guy in all of this. I don't know why, but it's a FromSoft game, so I'm sure I'm a bad guy, and I'm just wreaking havoc in this weird world that I don't fully understand. And I always kind of like that feeling of being in a world that's way bigger than me and mysterious and strange, and that's what Elden Ring gives me, so I'm really digging that.
Nice. I really like it. I actually was having a hard time getting momentum in the early goings of this, because I think the first part is just so similar, and I was playing my same build that I'd been playing for a little while.
Yep.
And then it was when I got to Shadowkeep that I started to feel like I was seeing more of the interesting new layers of this DLC, and I became much more interested in, seeing even more and going deeper. Bing! Kirk here as I'm editing the episode. Like I mentioned earlier, we recorded this episode about a week ago, and as a result, I've had a lot more time to play Shadow of the Erdtree in the time between when we recorded this and right now, the day before it publishes, as I am finishing up the edit. So I just wanted to add a couple more thoughts here to my, earlier thoughts that I recorded last week, just to say I really think that this DLC is amazing. I know a lot of people have complained about the difficulty, but I have found that by exploring and finding all of those Skadu tree fragments, I'm actually doing pretty well. They also just hotfixed the game so that the early fragments that you find make you a little bit more powerful, which is good to hear because it makes the learning curve a little less steep. You might not get stomped quite so hard by scrubby enemies at the beginning of this DLC. Though if you roll in here and you don't pick up any fragments and think you're just going to go fight bosses because you're high level, the game will be very happy to remind you of the fact that is not a good plan. Anyways, I just wanted to say I've had a lot more time to experiment with some of the new weapon types that are introduced in this DLC. I've really been into the light greatsword, though the great katana, I think it's called, is also really cool. I've been using Milady, which is a light greatsword that featured in a lot of trailers. You can get it pretty early on, and it has this really graceful and very cool moveset. It also pairs very well with an Ash of War that you find that's called Wing Stance, that lets you kind of hold your sword out to the side, and then you get this medallion that if you hold a stance for a while before attacking, it kind of synergizes with that to give you an attack boost. And the whole thing is just really fun. I think there are so many other cool combat styles that are available now. It really just feels like the game has opened up in a lot of cool ways, and I'm amazed by how big this DLC is as well. I think that none of the three of us really realized the sheer scope of Shadow of the Erdtree back when we recorded this conversation, but the more you play, the more you realize that wow, it's super big. Miyazaki described it as being the size of Limgrave, and he was trolling. It's absolutely gigantic. So anyways, I just wanted to add a couple of those thoughts here while I'm giving my impressions from about a week ago when we recorded this. The rest of this conversation totally holds up. This is a great DLC, and it's really fun in the early hours, just like it is in the kind of later mid hours where I am now. So anyways, pretend that Jason and Maddy were listening to me say all of that, and I'm going to just kick it back to my past self to take back over. Bing! I think I was level 176 or something.
Oh,
it was
wow, okay.
my save game from right before the New Game Plus. Mm-hmm. So I'm, pretty mighty. I've got a pretty crazy build. It's like a Dex Faith build with also high arcane and bleed. So I have a ton of points to work with.
Great.
And might respec at some point to work one of these new sword classes, because there are new types of weapons. And what's it called? It's like the light great sword. It's kind of somewhere in between a long sword and a great sword. It seems really fun and kind of right in the kind of gameplay that I like. So there are a ton of new weapons and abilities in this that I really would like to explore, because I kind of had a good time with Elden Ring, getting into builds and going beyond my basic strength, strength faith build that I beat the game with, and getting into a dex bleed build with a Bloodhound Step, kind of zooming around the battlefield and causing bleed and doing all this damage. And that became very fun. So at first, playing the expansion, I was kind of like, all right, it's more Elden Ring. That's cool. That's great. But there was a lot of Elden Ring to begin with. And I don't know if I really needed more, or if I quite have the, like you said, Jason, the stamina. But then, as I've gotten further into it, I've started to discover what it is that makes this, like how the DLC actually works. And once you start to come to it on its own terms, I think that it becomes a more special experience and a pretty interesting one. Like, it really is. It's kind of Elden Ring in microcosm, but it does have its own ideas and has its own rhythms. I think a big thing is the way that upgrades work. Can one of the two of you maybe explain upgrades?
Yeah, I was going to say before, Maddy, I don't think the level matters quite as much as you're concerned it does, because throughout the DLC, you get these special upgrade items. The names are escaping me right now.
Erdtree fragments.
Yeah,
there's another one.
Yes, sure. Basically, you upgrade your power, your overall power, and you upgrade your ashes, your spirit's power. And clearly, this game, just like Elden Ring, it felt like the spirit of ashes were always kind of overpowered, but clearly it wants you to be using them. And so I think as long as you're finding those upgrades, and I think if you get stuck on a boss, the idea is you should go through another path until you find more upgrades. And all of these upgrades, or at least many of them, can be found near where these big landmarks called Miquella's crosses are, and those are parts where Miquella, in the lore of this DLC, has left his parts of his body, and so you wind up following those as you go, and the story is kind of like you're going alongside these other adventurers or pilgrims or whatever who are also trying to walk the path of Miquella and go along those, and so that's all tied into the story. But what you can do is you also find these maps as you go that will show you where they're based. So what you can do is, if you run into a wall of a boss, instead of going and farming souls, you want to look at your maps and look for new crosses, because they'll give you those upgrades, and that'll help you defeat things a lot more easily than I think just some random stat points will. So that, I think, is a unique system. Also important to note that those upgrades do not work in the rest of Elden Ring, only in this DLC area. So they're very clearly meant to be like, this is how you get past these ultra hard challenges within this DLC.
I think that's just, so that system is worth talking about a little bit more, because I think it's really clever and it works really well, and it does dramatically change the way the game feels to play. So it's clever because of what you just said, like that it delineates everything in the DLC as its own, its own whole self-contained ecosystem, and as a result, they don't have the leveling problem that some other FromSoft expansions have, where you're still tied to the souls and collecting them and leveling up, so your level matters, but it's kind of complicated because of how much damage enemies do. So it's kind of just hard to balance the whole thing out. Like, this feels much more carefully created to be this distinct experience that you just have from start to finish. And then, the way that it rewards you for exploring. That's true that you can go and find those crosses, and then you'll typically find a Erdtree upgrade piece there, or the Ashes upgrade. You'll also find them in the Legacy dungeons, but also sometimes they're just hidden around. I made my way up kind of north through the Shadow Keep to this one area that I could only reach by going through this crazy hidden path in the Shadow Keep.
Yep.
Which area? The Mossy Ruin area, or a different one?
Oh, I can't remember the name. It was kind of beyond, I don't know, it was around and down, and eventually I was in a very dark area. And to the north of the map, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with light. I think the art direction in this expansion is pretty incredible overall, but there's a lot of neat stuff going on where you'll be in shadow and it's really, really dark, and then you'll ride out into the light of the sun, and suddenly you'll be in the light, and then you'll be back in the shadow. So I'm down in this watery, very dark area, and I follow follow some notes that were left by players saying, oh, there's a really good item up here. And I kind of run through this weird dark cave and I found a Erdtree upgrade. That's like a really great thing to find, and was rewarded for exploring with something that really felt like a reward. Where a lot of times in Elden Ring, you'd find, like a spell that you can't use because of, because you're not playing a spellcaster.
Yeah, or another spirit ash that you don't want.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I found a catacomb that is all dark, and you could use a lantern, which will help you navigate it. But also you find light switches throughout that like turn on the lights for different sections of it. So yes, this DLC definitely plays with light and shadow in an interesting way, as befitting of its name.
I've really been using my old lantern a lot, which is like an Elden Ring mechanic that I hadn't really thought about in a while. But now I'm constantly having my lantern on and trying to light my way and figure out where I'm even am, because it keeps being really freaking dark.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of aesthetically, absolutely. It is stunning looking. Again, I think I worry that some people will bounce off at the beginning, because at the beginning it's just like, oh, this looks like more of the same. But then as you get through, I mean, the Shadow Keep, as we've described, is just full of interesting. There's like one room that's like centered on this big, it's called the Specimen Laboratory or something like that. And there's one giant beast that is stuffed or something that is kind of like
a weird dragon.
It's really interesting looking, and there are shelves and libraries built around it. There's another section of the Shadow Keep where it's all submerged roofs, and you have to jump on top of them and kind of do some platforming to get around. There's this one area that I alluded to earlier that's just mossy ruins, and it's really, really interesting looking and full of kind of jungle-ish enemies that is unlike anything in the main Elden Ring. So yeah, aesthetically they really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it looks so cool. There's that other part that's just like, on the map, it just looks like this huge black swirl. And then when you get there, it's just like a bunch of weird grooves in the ground. I don't even know what that is. I mean, that's part of the thing about Elden Ring that I like, where you just go somewhere and you're like, well, this looks really weird on the map. I wonder what it's going to be like when I get there. And you're like, oh, it's super freaking weird. It's just a really weird landmass. And I don't know why it is this way, and there may or may not be an NPC who ever tells me why it is this way, and there's creepy, unique enemies that explore this strange place. I don't know. It rules. I mean, we talked a lot about the map in Elden Ring back when we were first playing it, and I'm really reminded of that, of like seeing kind of the topography of the map and kind of thinking I know what it's going to indicate, and being like, oh, it looks like there's like a little ledge there, and then I'll go to wherever it is and it'll be completely different than what I actually thought, but there'll be something else there that I can do, or like a cave is hidden. And that whole aspect of the game is something that other games, at least not in my experience, can't quite do with the map, because it's not necessarily topographical. It's more just stylized or has icons or whatever.
Yeah, there's no other games with a map quite like Elden Ring, in part because Elden Ring is just so good in instilling that sense of discovery and making it feel like it's worth it every time you go. This game also plays around with verticality. This DLC plays around with verticality in a way that the first game only kind of teased at in some sections of its map. In this game, it feels like, and I keep saying in this game, in this DLC, this expansion, it feels like every section of the map has layers to it, and you can't always tell from the map whether you're gonna have to like climb up a bunch of floating tombstones to get to where you need to go, or climb down them to get to where you're kind of looking at and trying to get to, or if that landmark that you see is actually 100 feet above you and you can't get to it until you come back later through a totally different route. It's a really different way of navigating, and kind of gives you a different rhythm rather than the classic Elden Ring style of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go find that map marker and put it on my map and then just ride the horse straight to it and then go from there. This is a little bit more they're more Byzantine paths, I would say. It's a little bit harder to circumnavigate the entire map.
Yeah, for sure.
Something interesting about this DLC is that the stakes are pretty different, because getting killed and losing your souls, or whatever they're called in this game, your runes, is not that big of a deal, because, I mean, at the point that I'm at in the game, I can just go to that cliff in front of Mog's palace and equip that end game sword that just drops that massive
sword.
light.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, the like destroying light beam.
Sacred relic sword?
Yes. Yeah,
Something like
Sacred
that?
Elixir.
Yeah, and you can get whatever it is, 50,000 runes in 2 seconds. So I can just get hundreds of thousands of runes and essentially level up infinitely if I want to and get to all the soft caps. So it's just losing 20,000 runes or 100,000 runes even is just totally not a big deal. And that kind of makes sense with what Elden Ring is anyways, because even in the base game, a lot of that tension was removed or at least reduced because you could fast travel, you could get around so easily. There wasn't quite as much of that feeling of like, oh, I'm in a really dangerous new area and I'm holding on to all these souls and I really need to get to a shortcut because I don't have a lot of health left and I'm out of Estus flasks. That feeling that you get especially in Demon Souls and in Dark Souls, it just wasn't that common in Elden Ring to begin with. And now in the DLC, it's essentially gone. Like, it's a just totally different experience exploring. There's still risk because you might get killed, and sometimes getting killed means you lose progress, like in some of the dungeons. But it's the stakes are just very different, and I find myself, I don't really mind that. I think it's fine, but it is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only annoying part is that you'll have to like go back and potentially fight some tough monsters that you thought you had already done away with. Yeah. But that leads to the other brilliant thing about this, which I think is the case in a lot of Souls games, which is Kirk, when we were in LA in the car, you were talking about your how fond you are of that meme with the skeleton just being like, just hit the bricks, just get out of there.
Yeah. My favorite meme.
Yeah, the share zone meme.
You can leave.
Real winners quit.
That is such a good poll for this scenario.
I think about that all the time as I'm playing Elden Ring.
Yes.
And I'm running face to face with like a tough monster, and I'm like, oh god, like I just beat this. I don't want to do it again. Wait a minute, I can just leave. Hit the bricks. And you just run right past it, and it works almost every single time, unless it's a boss or something. But almost every single time.
Even
works.
then,
hey, there's a giant torch monster in your way. Hit the bricks.
Just leave.
Just leave.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a boss, usually there's something else you can do. I mean, we talk about this all the time with this type of game, but because it's a surprisingly big DLC, there is actually a lot of other stuff you can do, especially when you get to the Shadow Keep, because there's so many different paths to explore, and there are a lot of little optional bosses, some of which are really freaking hard, but you can tell they're optional. So that's useful too, because you're like, okay, I kind of get that if I want to go back and face that guy at some point, get a bunch of runes, even if I don't need them, fine, I can do that. But also I can just explore a little mausoleum, or just go check out a pathway I hadn't been down yet, or try to find another map fragment. Yes, I'm still trying to find map fragments. I have not collected them all yet. And that is useful. It's something that's comforting, and not like other games, and something that I really like about this style of game is that I never feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm just stuck here. And every time I boot up this game, I have to just keep facing this exact same obstacle until I beat it, which can be demoralizing.
Another thing that I like about this expansion is just how it fleshes out the entirety of Elden Ring. So PvP is something that I think the three of us don't really mess around with too much, but is a big part of Elden Ring and something that some people really like. And I looked at some breakdown of how many items and ashes and like new fighting styles, and like there's like a whole unarmed fighting style in this game that you can unlock.
Yeah, there's like martial arts that you can unlock. I haven't even found this yet, but I'm really looking forward to it.
So I'm sure that stuff will get factored into the main game. Like if you're speedrunning, or, you know, you really quick run into the DLC area just to get whatever, some sword that winds up being a really great sword for some kind of build. And so it expands the game in ways that I think the three of us can't even begin to imagine, because we haven't seen everything in the DLC, and we haven't like played the game in its entirety, just because I think everybody playing the DLC is going to be coming to it with a save game that they left behind a couple of years ago, or at least a lot of people. And over time, it's just the experience will just become, this is Elden Ring. It includes this huge area that you can go reach once you beat these two bosses that has whatever 40 new weapon types in it or whatever it is, and like expands the game so hugely. And you can just kind of run in there before you even go and fight, you know, any of the later bosses in the main story.
it's really cool to imagine somebody playing Elden Ring for the first time like a year from now and just already having this and being like, oh, sick, I'm gonna like outfit my whole guy with Wolverine claws and like fight Melania that way. And like, I don't even know what that fight would look like with the completely other weapons that are introduced in this DLC. But like now we're gonna be seeing videos of people doing some classic boss fights in completely different ways, which is really fun. Like just because there's so many different things in the game now. And half the fun of Elden Ring for me is just watching other people play it, because
Definitely.
I'm not as familiar with every build, and it's really fun to see how other people end up playing the game and what they discover.
It's funny because when we all finished Elden Ring, we were all kind of like, that was a little bit too much, a little bit too bloated there.
Yeah.
Especially some of the stuff in
bigger.
the north and the Giants territory.
Yeah,
and now it's even bigger.
True.
Although, I mean, I don't know. I think that as we play more, we might our opinions may change. But at least right now, I'm feeling like this stuff is high quality enough. It's dense enough. It's interesting enough that it's making me feel like it's not too much. It's not like the mountaintops of the Giants where it just felt a little too barren and a little too uninteresting to be throwing that much new stuff at you at that point. This feels a little bit higher quality. Then again, that could be because I haven't played Elden Ring in 2 years and 4 months. So like,
It could be. I think you're right. I think you're onto something, because in the original game, there are so many repeated bosses. A lot of what you wind up doing is going into a jail and then like fighting the story boss that you just fought.
Yes.
Like there was a lot more of that feeling of repetition that I personally didn't mind because it was all pretty fun. But, I think some people did, and were right to call it out. In the DLC, at least from what I've played, it has a much denser and richer feeling to it. And it is like you described it, Maddy, as a 40-hour experience. That's what I've seen in reviews as well. And that is like significantly smaller than Elden Ring. And I think just it leads me to think like maybe this length is a good length for this kind of a game. And Elden Ring, I mean, I played 160 hours or something, totally bananas, and definitely was feeling kind of exhausted by the end, just because who wouldn't feel exhausted at the end of 160 hours of anything?
Yeah, well, so I think even from the beginning, you find some things in this that don't kind of succumb to that repetition that that Elden Ring, the original, did. So, for example, you find a jail underneath the big castle in the first map screen of Shadow of the Erdtree. And instead of just looking like some of the other jails that we saw in Elden Ring, it is this kind of frozen cavern that is built around a big pit with lots of jars hanging down. And then you start to see jars, and then you start to see the things that are inside of the jars, and people getting threatened to be thrown into jars. And it's a whole little jar subplot up in there. Lots of good jars in this
I haven't
DLC.
seen that yet, actually.
Oh, you haven't
seen the
found
jar.
it? Oh,
There's
man.
jar
So this
lore.
is a jail. There's a lot of jar lore, but this is a jail. What I'm describing.
There's a lot of jar lore in the base game.
There is. There's more.
This is a jail that's underneath Ballarat Castle, which is the first castle that you run into.
Oh, I've been trying to figure out how to get to the bottom of it because I can see there's stuff down there, but I haven't figured that out yet. So I gotta go back there. And
so the
explore
entrance
some
to the jail is outside of the castle. You have to go in a different direction. But that's what I was talking about earlier with verticality. There's a lot of that sort of thing in this game where you see something below you. In Elden Ring, in the first Elden Ring, there were a lot of instances where you'd see something on the horizon and you know to go look out for that, or you'd see it on your map and you know to go find that landmark. In this game, there's a lot of that too, but there's also a lot more verticality. So like you might see something, you might be in one area of the map and not even realize how high up you are and how much lower the stuff beneath you is.
Yeah.
On that first area, you can actually see, if you kind of walk up to some of the edges of the cliff in different parts of that first map, you'll see hints at how much bigger the world really is. And in fact, it does the Elden Ring trick where the world map looks really small at first, but then just keeps expanding as you discover more stuff, and it gets to the point where you're like, holy crap, this DLC is humongous. This is probably the biggest DLC ever made, certainly the biggest From Software DLC that they've done. Definitely feels like a whole new game that they've just tacked on to Elden Ring.
Yeah, it really does. It does. I am remembering how hard some of the platforming is, though. I feel like we are talking about the verticality a lot, and insofar as I have a complaint, I think it is that sometimes that does start to grate on me a bit. Like trying to gauge distances when I'm riding Torrent around and being like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can make this jump. Okay, I can't. And then I'll see a jump where I'm like, that's too far. And it turns out I could have made it, actually. I think that if you have a whole lot of verticality in a game like this, it's actually pretty difficult to include landmarks that make it clear, especially if you're just like also wanting to have totally unfamiliar monsters and totally unfamiliar land masses and ruins that the player isn't going to know how big they are until they're next to them. But if you're also trying to get that person to jump in some places and not others, while also maintaining the FromSoft tradition of trolling you slightly and having you think maybe you can do things that you can't do, it's a little tricky at various points.
For me, at least, that's where bloodstains have been very helpful.
Yes.
A lot of times I'll get to a cliff and I'll look over and think, I really want to get down to that trail down there, and then I look around and there's nothing but bloodstains around me. I'm like, I am not the only one. Even in this pre-release period, I'm not the only one to have this.
Shout out to all the pre-release, not only the bloodstains, but also the note makers.
Some great notes.
I know, it's great.
It's extremely funny to play this game knowing that only reviewers and maybe like From Software testers are playing it, but still seeing the same sort of jokes. Like, of course, there's a turtle and next to it a note saying dog.
Yes.
Or like a note saying secret passage ahead, and then a note behind it saying
liar ahead. Yeah. Or like a closed door that says, oh, you don't have the right.
Yeah, you don't have the right. Shout out to all of the Polygon employees who are leaving these notes. And
yes, everybody knows the shared language at this point.
I'll admit I've been leaving some notes. I have definitely like hit upon some things. I mean, especially like when I first got the code and I was like, oh, there's some places here where it's like I did find a secret, or like it does turn out that there's an item ahead. I've certainly been leaving notes. And the ones that I always upvote are the ones where it's like be wary of right and there's like a guy hiding there. Those are always the ones where I circle back and I give it a little upvote because I'm like, yeah, this person helped me.
Well, and pre-release is the best time to write notes because if you can get a couple good notes placed when there aren't that many people playing, then when the game goes public and everyone is playing, you'll get a bunch of upvotes. I had that. I think it was in the base game. I had a couple of notes that just constantly got votes.
Yeah,
and I would get
health, right?
my flask would get
your flask got refilled.
I think it's your flask or your health. I can't remember.
That's nice, but it's kind of easy mode. It's giving you a big
it's helpful, but then you start to overly rely on it, and then like eventually you'll either write over it if you want to leave more notes or delete it. Yeah, I think back to the verticality thing. I think the verticality is really effective in dungeons. I mean, it really works for the world map as well because it's cool to realize that you're under somewhere that you were before.
Yes.
It's something that the base game did well in the capital and in that first castle. It was showing you that, like, oh, weird, there's an elevator here.
Yeah.
But I don't know where that goes. And then that just makes you realize there must be a basement to this castle. And then the capital was like an incredible feat of level design, the main capital of the base game. And I feel like that kind of design is taken to a whole new level in the Shadowkeep. Like, it's the same kind of idea, but even more elaborate and then more varied, just because the keep itself is kind of mysterious and has a whole lot more variety inside of it, where the capital was just kind of this city that, had a dragon attack and fallen apart. And so it had sewers and it had, some buildings that you could move through and rooftops that you can go across, but it was just a city. So it is very cool to see them experimenting with that. And another reason for that's cool is that it's closer to how Dark Souls worked. I mean, that's when people talk about Dark Souls level design and why the original Dark Souls is such a great game. It's because that game is this amazingly designed vertical stack where everywhere that you go is like just one elevator ride away from the complete opposite end of the world in terms of biome and difficulty and experience. So the fact that they're able to kind of bring that back in all these surprising ways in Elden Ring is really cool. I guess my question for the two of you is, we're playing this game. It's making Elden Ring even bigger. Elden Ring feels in so many ways like the From game. What do they do after this? Like, what comes next? Like, is there gonna be an Elden Ring 2? I feel like I saw somewhere maybe they said there wasn't gonna be one.
No, Miyazaki most recently, he actually said that he wants to continue making the same sort of like non-linear experience, and he wants to take a lot from Elden Ring. I also just saw a headline about him talking about how like he's still trying to make his ideal RPG, and Elden Ring is close, but it's not quite there yet. Yeah, well, so they take Elden Ring and then they add a mechanic that lets you combine items that you see to make vehicles, and then you can
Tears of the
fly
Ring.
around.
Yeah, exactly. Ultra hand, and then you make a really long bridge, etc., etc. Yeah,
Exactly. No, yeah, I mean, they could go in a number of different directions. I don't know. They're from software. They're geniuses. They'll figure it out. Maybe they'll switch gears a little bit and help George R.R. Martin write Winds of Winter and finally get that out there.
Could use the help. Yeah, maybe they could lie to him and tell him it's for a really cool video game, but he actually just needs to finish writing in order to complete it. Yeah, I don't know. I agree, actually, Jason. I think they will do something completely different, because I feel like Sekiro was kind of that way, and Bloodborne is kind of that way. Like, yeah, there's some core similarities that we talked about. We did an episode about Souls games and what makes a Souls game and the idea of collecting souls and so on. And I do feel like those games are pretty substantially different in how they feel to play, though, and aesthetically. So I feel like it would be another one of those where I couldn't predict what it would be, but it would still be something that had souls in it. It's just that everything else about it would be completely different, which is also a little sad, because, like I said, I actually really like the specific aesthetic and story that I don't understand of Elden Ring.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they didn't do a sequel. And by the way, I just want to follow up on something you said earlier, Kirk, where you were talking about the verticality of the dungeons. I think what it kind of strikes me in playing Shadow of the Erdtree is actually more the verticality of the open world stuff, which I think is something we hadn't seen in the base game at all, and that I don't remember from previous Souls games at all either, where you get to, so I mentioned earlier the Mossy Ruins area. You get, that one really struck me, because you get to that and it is way up in the sky, and you look down and you can see, maybe you see the church that you visited a few hours
but
earlier,
it's all
and
like
you noted on your map, and it's way
and
like
you clouds, and you can't really see shit because it's clouds below you, that part.
Well, but you can see areas where like you have to find a way to traverse down, and maybe the map fragment is like down and you don't know how far down it is, and there's different elevators within the ruins that then take you inside of the ruins, and as you're going through the ruins you also get like different portions that are outside, and you can see how far down you've gone, and you're trying to keep getting down further, or maybe you're going the opposite direction and you're trying to get up further, and it plays around with that verticality in a way that also is in the open world. That is not something that I had seen, because that I think really adds a new element to it, because you're on your horse and you can do the double jumping, and it really feels, it has a different feel than anything in the base game or anything in a Souls game that I played before.
Because a lot of times you're seeing something you can't get to, but you're having to figure it out on your own. I mean, we're also playing this without guides. I mean, we have to, because we've been playing it ahead of time, but that can be a really fun way to play a FromSoft game, because you have to purely rely on the map, spatial awareness, and just trying stuff and just walking around and being like, okay, I know I'm kind of trying to go down. Because I did exactly what you're describing, Jason. I was like looking down and being like, okay, well, I know where the map fragment is. It's really freaking far away. It's down below the cloud cover. I don't know how I'm going to get there. So I'm just going to keep exploring the Shadow Keep and trying all the different pathways that I can see, and just trying to get down as much as I can, and fighting different guys of various difficulties as I go. And that is, it's a really hard, cool puzzle that almost doesn't have anything to do with combat or like classic environmental puzzle design, where it's like, oh, I need to find a key or something. It's just looking around and trying to recognize where you are and not get lost. And like, that is the puzzle, is simply trying to keep your spatial awareness intact, especially if you don't have a map fragment. So you have nothing but your own memory of a place you were.
Yeah, so the thing, I mean, to get back to what you were asking, Kirk, I think the thing that I would love to see from a sequel is something that goes a little bit beyond medieval fantasy, because that's the thing where I'm like, all right, I don't need to see another castle, I don't need to see another village.
Well, there's Armored Core, right?
That's true.
Well, Armored Core is a totally different beast. I mean, a soul, like an Elden Ring 2 that goes maybe a little bit into some other genre, plays around with some other genre. Obviously, Bloodborne is beloved, and that is full on gothic horror, steampunk, and
Sekiro is different.
A Bloodborne, yeah. Well, but I was gonna say an open world style Bloodborne game. I think would be pretty killer. But they could also play around with other genres too. Maybe make it The Little Mermaid and just set it under the sea.
That would actually be really cool, like an undersea.
Did you guys play?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, did you play
so
Another
weird.
Crab's Treasure? There is an undersea Souls-like that just came
Yeah,
out.
but I mean like fucked up monsters undersea, not like a fun little crab.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying. It's just funny that a game like that actually recently came out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious what they'll do next. I think since Dark Souls 3, there's been this feeling that playing, that where you're playing one of their games and thinking, okay, this just feels like an text for every FromSoft game before it. Dark Souls 3 certainly felt like every Dark Souls game, and it brought back all these bosses from earlier games. And Elden Ring feels like, I mean, it's its own world. It's not the world of Souls, but it's pretty similar aesthetically, and a lot of the monsters are pretty similar. And yeah, playing this DLC, it's like, okay, wow, they added even more. Now there's a big knight that has 2 swords, and actually that's a pretty different kind of a boss. And like they could kind of go on infinitely with this,
Two
just
swords
because
this time.
Yeah, instead of 1 sword, you see.
they're kind of, but I mean, then that winds up making a big enough difference,
It
as I keep
does.
finding in this DLC, that like these minor changes wind up actually feeling pretty substantial. And yeah, maybe they could just do that forever. But even the amount that I've played does make me want to go back and maybe replay Sekiro or something. Like just play something really different that still has that from Juice, that's still obviously a game made by them, that has that energy, but is a really different experience.
Yeah, well, Sekiro is all about parrying, whereas Elden Ring, at least the way a lot of people play it, is all about dodging and strafing and circling around enemies, which is an incredibly, like, a way different rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, the level design in Sekiro is also just super different, and the overall progression design, like everything about that game is different. And it's been a long time since I played it, and I never finished it. And everyone says it. A lot of people still say it's the greatest
great game.
one.
I replayed it relatively recently. I was talking about it on the show a couple of years ago as I was replaying it on my PC, and I think I got up to the last boss and then just stopped for some reason. But yeah, phenomenal
For some
game.
reason.
Oh, so
Maybe it
you
was
did get
hard.
all the way up to the last boss.
I did.
I got to the part where you're like, all the sort of samurai have attacked the place where you were before, and you have to creep around them, and they're really, really hard to fight. I feel like that's maybe 2/3 of the way through the game or something. That's where I stopped. So
Sounds about right.
I might try to restart it and get a little bit further past that, but I don't know. There's a lot of other stuff to play.
Yeah, it's a fun game. It's really the Genichiro fight is really a roadblock, and once you get the hang of that one, and you have really learned how it works, and then you can kind of make your way through the rest. But yeah, man, there's some tough fights in that game. That friggin', I was stuck on that ape that throws feces at you for a really long time.
Oh, right, where you kill him and then he comes back.
And then he comes back. Oh man.
Yeah,
what a
I
twist.
wonder if there are any. I haven't fought any boss fights that feel like quite as much of a wall in this Elden Ring DLC, even though it's very hard, and I've run into ads like just regular guys out in the wild that are hard. But
So
part
have
of
you
that is
guys
because I
fought-
can. Well, part of that is because I can summon and I can use the mimic tier, and like there are a lot of ways that you can mitigate the difficulty of a given fight.
Have you guys fought that armor knight Gaius? I think is his name. He's on a horse. He charges at you. The back gate of Shadowkeep. Okay, well, good
boy.
luck on that guy.
He's tough.
Great. Can't wait.
That is-
Can't
that
wait
is a
for a
fucker.
guy
That is
on
a
a
fucker and a
horse.
half.
There's always a guy on a horse in an Elden Ring that's like weirdly harder than every other boss. I remember running into some horse battles.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see when we can learn a little bit more from people who've played through the entire thing, if there are any bosses that are, just some optional boss that's the hardest thing that's ever happened, that's like even harder than Melania in the base game.
I've heard some of that from my coworkers, but I've kind of skimmed over it because I don't really want to totally spoil myself, but I do know that there will be some, and that's great for people who want to do that. I
Yes.
make no promises about bothering with any of those, but I want to see the
No.
story through at least.
So my one
Yeah.
big gripe in this game, so I've been using Bloodhound's Fang, which is the most powerful
Same.
weapon in the game. But
the
my one
best.
gripe is that your respecs are super limited because the larval eggs that you use to respec there are only a limited number of them. You can't get an infinite number. And so if you played around with a bunch like in the base game before the DLC even hit, you might only have a couple left, or maybe you don't have any left. And if you want to play around with the new weapons and try different builds to see if you like one of those weapons, it can be a real pain to like have to figure out how to respec it or know that you can only respec one more time or whatever. That's really annoying. And then on top of that, you also, if you really want to get a feel for the power of these new weapons, you have to upgrade them fully, and there are limited number of smithing stones, and especially the more powerful upgrade items you can use to upgrade them. So you're not really as encouraged to experiment with builds as I wish you could be. So that's one takeaway that I hope they have for future games, is to make some of this stuff a little less limited. So just so you can, or at least give you a tool, like some sandbox where you can experiment with builds without having to commit to them fully, because that part is a little bit of a drag.
Yeah, that was something Lies of P did, where they patched the game to make it easier to get to respec faster and to get to the respec more quickly and make it easier to do. Because I mean, I have a lot of those larval tears. Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
I have a lot of
something like
those,
that.
but I think I just collected a lot and I only respec'd once. I wonder if there are more hidden somewhere in the DLC, because that would be
There
one
might
way
be, yeah.
they could fix it. Because I definitely have found, to the smithing stone point, like I am finding lots of smithing stones.
Same.
Like you'll
I was
kill
just
a guy and
thinking
he'll
that.
drop like 10
Low
smithing stones.
level ones though,
Yeah, but
not
that's
like
for
the higher.
No, I
upgrading
found like an
early.
ancient dragon smithing stone, and I
you
found a
did?
couple
Okay,
that
that's
let you
useful.
max items out. But they do keep those fairly limited. That's true.
Yeah, I haven't found any larval tears yet. so.
Yeah, and I know if you get the bell bearings, you can like buy a certain number of smithing stones. Like if you did that,
Right.
Jason, in the base game, you can then.
But that's
purchase
no, it's
them.
the ancient
The
dragon.
ancient dragon
smithing
ones.
stones
Yeah,
the
those are the
that-
ones you
yeah,
really
those are the
need.
ones that you need.
And they're scarce. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't found any larval tears. Hopefully there are some hidden throughout. But yeah, it would be a little nice if there was some way to respec without.
Yeah, especially for the DLC, if they just kind of opened it up and let you respec whenever you wanted to. It doesn't have to be that limited. Yeah,
That would be nice.
It doesn't really benefit the game
yeah,
at all.
like what if it was only allowed in the Shadow Realm or Land of Shadow or whatever? That would
Sure.
be fine, and then it would go back when you left. I don't know. Just let me try out all the new different swords without having
Agreed.
to commit.
Yeah,
That would be
Yeah,
nice.
that's really
That's my
honestly,
gripe.
I don't even see any downside to just making it easy for people to respec whenever they want to. Like at
I
any
don't
point in the
either.
game.
I don't feel like it makes
No.
the game that much easier, to be honest. Like
it
it's still
doesn't,
really
yeah.
hard because
No,
you
it
still
just-
have to
it makes it
know
more fun.
what you would
Yeah.
want it to be in the first place, which is half the difficulty, is even kind of looking
Right.
at what you have and being like, okay, this is like a high dex weapon,
Mm-hmm.
but I really want to try it and I kind of know how it works. So I'm going to rebuild everything according to that. I mean, that's already kind of a risk. And then you might try the weapon and be like, well, that sucked. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, they should make it free. That's our only
That would really,
request.
yeah, I would say something that Lies of P demonstrated is that giving players a lot of flexibility with their builds is just kind of makes the game more fun and doesn't
Yeah.
really take anything away from it.
It does.
So you hear that from your game sucks. Better fix it.
It's
Nailed
not
them.
too difficult, except in this one very specific way that we would
Yeah.
like you to change. The rest is fine. Keep it as is.
Yeah, it's great. Shadow of the Erdtree is cool. We're going to keep playing it. I'm certainly going to play more of it, and hope everyone out there is liking it. Let's take a break for now and come back with one more thing.
Hey, this is Mike Cablon,
Ifuadiwe.
and Sierra Kato,
the hosts of TV Chef Fantasy League.
where we apply fantasy sports rules to cooking competition shows.
We're not professional chefs or fantasy sports bros.
Just three comedians who love cooking shows and winning.
We'll cover Top Chef, Master Chef, Great British Bake Off, whatever's in season, really.
Ooh, you know chefs love cooking whatever's in season.
We draft a team of chefs at the top of every series.
And every week we recap the episode and assign points based on how our chefs did.
And at the end of the season, we crown a winner.
You can even play along at home if you want.
Or you can just listen to us like a regular podcast about cooking shows. That's cool too.
Subscribe to TV Chef Fantasy League on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hallelujah! Hello, welcome everyone. everyone.
Step right up. We're going to heal you. We are the healers, Ross and Carrie.
Yes. You there. You look like you're upset. Come up here.
Yes, you are healed because you've listened to our podcast.
Yes.
Have you been having trouble with demons?
Are you sleeping too much, too little, just right?
We have the solution. It is to listen to
Oh No, Ross and Carrie. A show where we examine unusual claims.
We show up so you don't have to. Find us on MaximumFun.org.
We won't actually heal you.
All right, and we're back with one more thing. Jason, why don't you go first?
My one more thing is the book Babel by the author R.F. Kuang, who also wrote the Poppy War trilogy, which I talked about a couple of years ago on this show. And Babel is a very different kind of book, but has a very similar conceit and structure to the Poppy War. So Babel is set in an alternate history, an alternate fiction version of the 1850s England, and it is set in a world where people have figured out how to use silver in magical ways to kind of create magic. And the way you do that is by taking this silver rod, and inscribing two different words on it in two different languages. And the rod will conjure some sort of magical power based on the differences or the commonalities between those two words, or what is kind of trapped in the ether. And it is a really interesting book. It's a book about translation and languages and linguistics and what that means. And it's also a book about colonialism. So the book's main character is this boy who is taken from his home in China at 4 years old by this British professor, who takes him and saves him from a plague and brings him back to London and raises him, and then sends him off to this university where he will become one of the translators who works on these silver rods. And to create these silver rods and to use them properly, you have to have fluency with both of the languages involved. So they look for people like this kid who are born in other countries and then can use their languages combined with English to make all sorts of interesting words. And then they study a bunch of other languages. And the book, as it unfolds, tells the story of this kid and his his traversals through the University of Oxford, and the people he meets there, and his fellow students and fellow people at this Tower of Babel, which is where they all study and learn how to make these silver rods. And the book explores all sorts of themes. It explores English colonization and the British Empire, and like I mentioned before, linguistics. It has a ton of interesting kind of dense stuff about different languages and the way they interact, and the words in different languages and where words come from. There's a lot of interesting kind of diversions throughout the text on that. But the main story is about this kid. And so as he grows older, he is approached by someone who looks just like him and turns out to be his brother, who tells him to come join this resistance and secretly sabotage the Tower of Babel, because it really only exists to make the British Empire richer by selling these silver rods, and kind of continuing the project of empire to just conquer more colonies and land, and make British people just the victors of the world of capitalism. And it's really interesting. I have not yet finished it, but I am a good chunk of the way through, and I'm really enjoying what I'm reading of it. I am very curious how it kind of what it ends up saying, other than colonialism is bad, because that is hit pretty heavy-handed throughout the book. I think the main characters are pretty much all subjugated minorities, people who were taken from other countries and brought to England and brought up by British families, so for the purposes of this project. And pretty much every person who's like a British white person in this book, it turns out to be evil in some way or another. So it's pretty heavy-handed with that message, but the linguistic stuff I find really fascinating. And I think it's an interesting book, even for the purposes of just finding out where some words or slogans or phrases come from. It's like really interesting from that sense. And the author, or if Kuang is herself like really linguistics like academic and is really into linguistics and knows a lot of clearly knows her shit, because some of the language that it plays around with gets really esoteric and interesting. So I'm really enjoying it from that perspective at the very least. And yeah, the story is really interesting, and it's a cool book. I am enjoying it. Once again, that's Babel by R.F. Kuang.
Cool.
Nice. Sounds good. Maddie, what is your one more thing?
Mine is the Reading Rainbow documentary that's on Netflix right now, which is called Butterfly in the Sky. And first of all, yes, there is a 10-minute chunk where they just interview the guy who wrote that song, and he plays all the synthesizers for you, and he sets up exactly how he made it sound that good, which is a really important part of Reading Rainbow, as we all know. But mostly, it's just a really cool documentary about the people who made a neat television show that Dina and I grew up watching, and that was on for a really long time. Like, I didn't realize it was on all the way until I want to say 2003, and LeVar Burton kept doing it even though he got cast in Star Trek, and he like thought he was gonna leave, but then he was like, actually, this is great and I want to make time to keep doing this show. It's obviously a really heartwarming documentary that will just maybe put tears in your eyes if you watch Reading Rainbow as a kid and you're like, man, this is such a great show, and the people who made it really cared about all these things. And
I'm glad it's not
good.
Like Quiet on the Set, like revealing like
Can
dark
you
truths
imagine
behind
if it was
Reading
like
Rainbow.
LeVar was such a diva, everybody hated him? No, it's like every person who
The
made
dark
this show.
side of the rainbow.
yeah. There's
The
no
clouds
gold at the
behind
end.
the rainbow.
Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. Instead, it's like we were working really hard on this thing that we cared about a lot. And the other unexpected cool thing about the documentary, I didn't remember this part of the show, but like they used to have little 9-year-olds do book reports on the show, and they like went back and found all these kids who are adults now and like interviewed them about their time on Reading Rainbow, which was like also surprisingly cool to hear their memories of it and how important it was for them to be just like a regular child who got to like write their own report. Like they wrote their own lines when they were like doing these little book reports. It wasn't like some adult was writing for them. Like, what did you think of the book? They would like get to write their own little 8 or 9 or 10-year-old version of what they thought. And that was really cool to hear about. And like they talk about what that process was like. So yeah, I really recommend it if you grew up watching Reading Rainbow. It's a really fun and heartwarming watch about the people who made the show. And it's called Butterfly in the Sky, obviously. And it's on Netflix, like I said. Yeah.
That sounds great. We'll definitely watch that.
Yeah, it's good.
We're big LeVar fans in our house. Have you listened to his podcast, LeVar Burton Reads?
I should.
Oh man, he has a podcast called LeVar Burton Reads where he reads a short story each episode.
Amazing.
And then talks about it afterward. And it's like Reading Rainbow for adults. Like it's him
rules.
telling you a story every episode with his wonderful
he
voice
refers to it in the documentary by just being like, apparently a bunch of people just want to hear me read books to them or whatever. And it's like,
great.
That is all we want.
And it's a great concept for a podcast. I think it's wonderful. I don't listen to every episode, but I've listened to it some, and Emily really loves it. So we're big fans of his. I didn't know about this documentary. I'm totally going to watch it.
It's very, very good.
Awesome. Well, my one more thing is also a Netflix film. It is the movie Hitman, which Emily and I watched over the weekend and is really great. And I think it's gotten pretty rave reviews. I'm sure people who pay attention to movies are aware that it's good, but I just wanted to say that I watched it and did really love it. And I think Glenn Powell is a very interesting kind of new movie star. Also not a unique take, but he's a really interesting actor. So this movie is directed by Richard Linklater. I don't know, the director of Dazed and Confused and my fave School of Rock and Everybody Wants Some and a Slacker and a bunch of other stuff. And he's always kind of got a philosophical bent to his movies. A lot of his movies involve people just having conversations. Of course, Before Sunset and Before Sunrise are two really famous ones where the whole movie is kind of just a conversation between two people. And there's a fair amount of that in Hitman, even though it's also kind of got this high concept, dark rom-com storyline. So the story of this is based on a true story, I think very loosely based on a true story, a 2001 story from Texas that was about a guy who moonlighted as a for-hire fake hitman for the police department. In the film, it takes place in New Orleans. So the main character is a guy named Gary who is played by Glenn Powell, who, of course, Glenn Powell being this like super tall, buff, extremely handsome movie star looking guy, does a very good job of playing a kind of nerdy philosophy professor at the University of New Orleans, who then he's doing tech for their sting operations, where they'll basically field a call from someone who wants to hire a hitman, and then they'll set up a sting where the person gives them money and says, I want you to kill my husband or whatever, and then they arrest that person. So he's doing tech, and then the cop who was supposed to be who's supposed to be in the field, he like got filmed beating up some teenagers basically, and has now been kind of removed from the public eye because he's a piece of shit. And so they need somebody to step in. And so Gary is kind of there, and they're like, you go do it, you got to do it. So he steps in, and it turns out he's amazing at it. So a lot of the movie is just watching this guy slowly figure out these different versions of himself. And that's really fun. And then it winds up being a really fun romance where he meets a woman. She's played by Adria Arjona, who I didn't know, who is beautiful. And the two of them are like really, really hot together. They have like incredible chemistry. And honestly, it's like a remarkable thing about the movie, because it's been a long time since I watched a rom-com where the two leads were like really like searingly hot together, and it's just fun to watch them like flirt, make out, and whatever. Like it just kind of is a fun part of the movie. But he meets her, whatever, they fall in love. But what's really cool about the movie is that it's this kind of philosophical exploration of like yourself and of remaking yourself. And they do that Linklaterian thing where, I don't know, he has this conversation with his ex-wife where they're talking about who he used to be and who he might be, and it really feels like Before Sunrise for a little while. And each of his lessons that he's teaching in class is about different philosophers and what they say about whether you can or can't change and what it means to take on a different persona. And of course, that's playing out in the story too.
Well,
so,
you can change, but you need enough larval tears to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. He does kind of respec himself into Ron, an upgraded class toward the end of the movie. Anyways, it's just a really fun, sexy, good time. It's very funny. It has a couple of like really show-stoppingly great scenes between the two of them, and just a super fun movie. So I highly recommend it. Had a great time watching it, and cool. A great way to spend a Saturday night. So that's Hitman. It's on Netflix.
Was Hitman in theaters, or it's only in Netflix?
I think it had a limited theatrical run, which I saw some lamenting about, because I think this would have been really fun to see in theaters. Mostly just because you don't see movies like this anymore. Like, you'll finish it, and just that was one of my main takeaways, was just they don't make R-rated, like, sexy romantic movies with like high concept that are kind of dark. There's definitely like murder and hits and stuff in this movie. It's surprising. It's not just a kind of fluffy whatever Netflix rom-com. It has some heft to it. It's got some things to say, and it's got a really great central performance from Glenn Powell. So yeah, great movie.
Cool. Awesome.
And that's it. That's another episode of Triple Click in the bag, ladies and gents.
Did it again.
Until the DLC comes out and we add 40 more hours to the podcast.
That's true. It'll be like a version of Triple Click that's a little more focused, a little more difficult to get through.
A lot more verticality. You're not sure where you can jump to.
Yeah, Kirk is the only one for verticality. Maddy and I have to bail because Kirk is significantly taller than us.
That's true. That's true. A good point. Yeah.
Well, until that comes out, I suppose I will see you for our next episode next week.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddy Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you like our show, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member at MaximumFun.org/join. Find us on Twitter at TripleClickPod, send email to tripleclick@MaximumFun.org, and find a link to our Discord in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported
directly by you.